Now let's see this isolated and memory mapped IO. Isolated versus memory mapped IO. So there are two ways you can connect IO devices to the CPU. So one way of connecting the IO devices is, if you have the CPU here, you can have one bus, as we have already seen it. Let's call it IO bus, and all the devices are connected to this. IO devices are connected to this through the interface only. Okay, interface and the peripheral both are present in this. And on the other side, we can have that local bus. Let us call it as memory bus, and to this memory bus, main memory is connected. This is one way of connecting it. We shall focus on this type of connection later when we talk about IO controller. When we get into the picture, a special type of processor which is called as IO controller. Now that IO controller will be connected to this bus as well as this bus here. Therefore, it can directly take whatever is required and it can transfer without interfering with CPU. But that is not the purpose of the discussion here. We shall see that discussion later. So for now, in this discussion, let's talk about the simplest model which is being used in many computers. So if you have CPU, and let us say this is the bus, to the same bus both the memory, main memory, as well as IO devices, both are connected to the same bus. Now there will be a conflict. The conflict arises when you have address bus, right? So let us say this is the address bus, control bus, and then data bus. Now whenever you put some address on the address bus, which address do you really mean? Now addresses will belong to main memory as well as to IO devices, right? So then there are two ways. So in order to tell you simply in simple words, if you put address number 100 on the address bus, right? So what do you really mean by it? Do you mean that this 100 refers to a memory location in the memory, main memory, that is in the RAM, or do you mean to say that 100 refers to an address of a device, of a IO device? Which one do you really mean? So there arises the conflict. So this conflict can be resolved in two ways. One way says that whenever you see this address, in order to identify whether it belongs to the main memory or the IO devices, you look into the control bus. Now control bus will have, apart from the other instructions, apart from the other lines, it will have 4 different lines. Apart from the existing functionality of the control bus, along with that it will have 4 different lines. So these 4 different lines are, one is IO read, IO write, memory read, memory write. Now when you put address number 100, if you mean that, or if you want this 100 to be identified with the IO device, then you have to identify one of these two. If you are reading from an IO device, then you have to highlight IOR. So if this one is 1 in the control bus, if this particular line is 1, then you are saying that address number 100 refers to IO device. Or if you say this one as 1, it means that address number 100 refers to the IO device and you are intending it for writing. So reading or writing, it doesn't matter, as long as any one of these two is 1, you mean that the address refers to the IO device. In case if any one of these two are 1s, then it means that you mean to refer memory, right? So depending on which one is 1 among these 4, you are actually resolving the conflict with the addresses. Got it? So if you are using this type of resolution, then this is called as isolated memory, isolated IO. Okay, so try to remember this, it is a bit confusing. because you might see that when they are not actually isolated, when the memory and IO devices are actually connected to the same bus, why am I calling it as isolated IO? I am calling it as isolated IO because we are using the control lines to identify them, right, to isolate them. Now one other thing about this isolated IO is we'll have separate instructions to refer to IO and separate instructions to refer to memory. For example, I have instructions like INP, which will be useful to read something from the IO device, OUT, which will be useful to write something onto the IO device. Now here I have load and store. Load is used to read something from the memory and store is used to store something onto the memory. Are you getting this? So what does isolated IO mean? Now an address can be present both in the memory as well as in the IO devices. Just to separate or distinguish which, about which one we are referring now, we are going to use the control lines. Now the control lines, the control lines which are useful are these four, apart from those which are already there, which indicate the other things like control, status, input, output, everything. Apart from this, we are having these four lines. These four lines are going to be useful. Now other way of resolving this memory confusion is, if you are having total memory from 0 to 1000, these are the total memory locations, then you divide it and then dedicate one part to IO and dedicate one part to the memory. Therefore whenever you give, let us say 0 to 200 I used for memory IO, and from 201 to 1000 I used for memory. Then whenever the address is from 0 to 200, then memory will never get activated. So you need not here use these four lines. It is self-evident, right? So whenever you see the numbers different, then you can identify whether it is IO or memory. And now in this case, we will not be having two types of instructions. So in this particular, so this one is called as memory mapped IO, right? So in this particular case, we will not have special instructions to perform IO. The same instructions which are used to perform memory operations like load and store, they will be useful, or they are also used to move the data between IO registers and the CPU, right? So here no extra instructions are used. The same instructions which are used to refer the memory, like these instructions, they will be used internally to move the data, right? So one advantage of using this type of methods is, or this type of mapping is, in most of the computers we will have lot of instructions for dealing with the memory words, and since the same instructions are used for IO as well, now we can apply lot of instructions to the IO registers as well. Now you might be wondering, what does addresses have to do with the IO? So if you understand what is present inside the IO devices, then you will understand it. I told you that there is something called as IO interface, and to the interface IO device is connected, right? So inside the interface we are going to have many registers, and these registers will get the addresses. Just like how the memory words get the addresses, these registers will get the addresses. For example, the address of this register is 101, 102, 103. Now when you place the address 101 on the bus, it means that you are talking about this particular register, where in case of memory mapped. In case of isolated IO, if you put 101 on the bus, then it can mean either 101 register or the main memory, in case if the register with 101 exists. Then how do you resolve it? By using the control lines. Got it? Okay.
Hi, if you are planning to do masters, then doing masters abroad is better than doing masters in India. I'll give you all the reasons. So, first reason is, out of 1 lakh students who take GATE every year, there are only 500 seats in old IITs. So all the IITs put together have an acceptance rate of 0.5%, and IITs, universities better than IITs, they have very good acceptance rate like 30%, 40%, but all the IITs put together have an acceptance rate of 0.5%. And if you are working hard to get into IIT Bombay, IIT Bombay's ranking is 177 and IIT Roorkee's ranking is 400. If you are happy to get into IIT Roorkee, then getting into universities better than IIT Roorkee is easier compared to getting into IIT Roorkee. And looking at the salaries for computer science, for software jobs, if you have done your masters in computer science in US, the salaries are ranging from 80 lakhs per year to 1.2 crore per year. So even if you take an average of 1 crore per year, your savings will be much higher than the salaries in India. After taxes and your cost of living, you can easily save 40 to 50 lakhs per year. And in India, the maximum jobs that you get is around 30 lakhs. So your savings will be much greater than the salaries in India. And these are all the services that we provide. University shortlisting. So depending on your profile, we will shortlist what are the universities that you have to apply, and statement of purpose building, and then LOR guidance, and GRE and English test assistance, and education loan assistance. So you don't have to have any collateral, which means without any security, now you can get education loan. Getting education loan is very simple these days, and whatever the amount of fee that you have a range of universities. You can apply for 10 lakh universities, 20 lakh universities, or 50 lakh universities. But whatever it is, you are going to get complete education loan, and you can pay off your education loan in 1 year after you get a job. And then we do visa assistance, mock visa interviews, and then connecting with the university alumni. So now you might ask why we should join Game of Visas. So the answer is we have 90% success rate, 99% success rate. And these are all the destinations that we guide the students to. So we guide students to any country that you want to go. So now it is not just USA. We guide to UK, Germany, Australia, Canada. So we guide students to all the countries. We work with all the destinations. And if you are interested in going abroad, you have to just drop us a message on this WhatsApp number 9494 555 454. Okay, thank you.